Welcome to another Brewster podcast. Helping me out in this episode with some playoff predictions will be Randy Wiegand of Havana and Tyler Simmons of Jacksonville. Thanks a lot for taking the time to be here, and welcome to another podcast, guys.
No worries, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ted.
So with the playoffs looming, we thought we'd try to make some predictions and see if we can make some sense of the wild card standings and maybe seedings if we can. And then for the second half of the show, there's a game I stole from Effectively Wild where we try to make some predictions about teams' playoff possibilities in the future. But we'll get started, I guess, with trying to figure out who's actually going to be in the playoffs. Seeding is trying to figure out what's going to happen there, but I don't think we're going to. So I guess before we got started, Randy, you decided maybe to say let's go with the Johnson first, and that's fine. So who's obviously Las Vegas?
Yeah, they're going to be. I mean, let's face it, Matt's the favorite every year in the Johnson until proven otherwise.
I don't know that he is.
Nobody's proven otherwise.
For that, we'll get to middle of the. He's going to be the top seed, right? And the real question is there? Do you think is there anybody that doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs right now that you think will? That either of you guys think will in the Johnson?
If you had asked me this 2 weeks ago, same time, I would have said Tyler's in trouble. Tyler, I don't think you're in trouble anymore. Congratulations.
I would say I think the only team that could fall out is Jacksonville. We do have a tough stretch coming up where we have, I think it's 11 straight against playoff teams. So if we can get through that, then we'll be in good shape. But I would say we're the only team that could potentially fall out. But I don't really know if Atlantic City or Brooklyn or Rockville are really the teams to pass us there.
Rockville's done. They got a fork sticking out of their back. Sorry, Aaron.
Atlantic City is possible, though, right? They're 8-2 in their last 10. That's a pretty, that's a 5.5 game deficit to make up with half the month left. So that's not impossible, but unlikely. But they end the season. They end the season with 4 at Vegas. That could be resting some guys. But they've got Nashville, Brooklyn, and Hawaii, so it's not like they've got an impossible run before that.
Whereas Jacksonville goes Montreal, me, and then I don't know who you got after that, but
Vegas.
Oh, have fun.
Wait,
yeah.
You guys can't both have Vegas.
Yeah. I think I have Vegas before that. I think I go Vegas, Montreal.
You actually just swept Vegas yesterday, or no? So you took.
I missed that one.
Yeah. So you got
yeah,
Montreal,
we did.
Havana,
did you miss the sim?
Yeah, I missed the sim. My full disclosure, my daughter had her birthday party yesterday, and my family's been in town, so they just left right before we started this podcast. So I haven't actually
seen the new sim. You did great.
Seen the new sim.
Even happier.
Yeah, you're up 5.5 now, Tyler, on the wild card.
You're
fine.
3 or 4 from Vegas, and after taking 3 or 4 from San Antonio. So, and your end's okay. You've got 8 games to close the season out against Huntsville. So I think we know who the playoff team
is in the playoffs.
I think the only question is you might be able to pass New Orleans because you're 3.5 games behind them. 3 games.
Right. Yeah. I had
2.5.
Oh, geez.
We prepare here at the podcast.
Yeah, we do a really good job just getting ready ahead of time.
Yeah. You're 2.5 behind New Orleans, and they've got some injury and been slip sliding lately.
6 games against Vegas, 4 against Charm City, and 4 against Montreal. So you could pass them.
Yeah, I guess that is possible, and I just don't think New Orleans is going to slip out of the playoffs.
No, they won't.
No.
I
mean, they'll the playoff teams are set, but and I don't think you're catching either Montreal or Charm City for.
But can you predict
second,
anything on the seeding? Like at all? I think you can say that, Randy, you've got a good shot of being the top wild card, right? Like I think
if you speaking of schedules left, look at mine. It's fantastic.
Right? Yeah.
San Antonio, Jacksonville. I think I throw some Hawaii in there.
Yeah. No, you end at Nashville. You end at Nashville, and you end at Rockville. And Aaron's not a bad team, but they're not a particularly strong team at this moment. They've got a future. The San Antonio games will probably help you a little bit, but I thought that like having a soft August would turn around my little bit of stuttering, and all I did was get swept by Huntsville and
Well, Huntsville just took 2 out of 3 from me, so I don't know how the hell that happened.
Sometimes the schedule doesn't do what you think it does, but I think you've got a pretty good lock on the top wild card spot. But that's all we know is that Vegas is one, because I don't know if it's going to be Charm City or Montreal getting a bye.
I think Vegas is 1, and I think the loser of that is going to stay in the 2 spot. I mean, with injuries and everything, I think John's going to take the division, and I think it's going to be Charm City slipping down into the 2 spot.
You do?
Right. If I had to put money down, I would put money on Montreal just because of the injuries that Charm City had last sim. Losing your best hitter and a number of other good players all in one sim is going to be tough for them down the stretch. So they can still hold on. They still have what is it, a half a game lead?
Half a game.
But I would, if I'm putting money down, I'm saying Vegas is the 1, Montreal's the 2. That leaves Savannah as the 3, and then I would have to go Charm City 4, and I guess it's kind of a toss up on the 5 and 6 seeds.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, so that means, and we know that 2 and 3 play each other. So.
Well, he was going overall. He was counting the bye.
Right. No, I got you. I got you on the overall.
So 4 and 5. So 4 and 5.
We're giving Vegas and Montreal the byes. Are you so sold on Montreal if we point out that after their 4 set against Charm City that they're going to have here, they finish against Vegas and New Orleans? Whereas Charm City finishes against New Orleans and Rockville.
I think yes, because I think Montreal is just a better team.
Okay.
Especially when you factor in injuries. I think they're just better at this point.
Yeah, I think the whole catch-22 with Vegas that last sim is who's Matt playing?
Right, is he getting his rotation ready?
Who's going to be in the lineup, who's going to be in the rotation.
And Matt's got nothing to prove. Like the rest of us, where we might try to squeeze out a couple other wins, Matt doesn't care.
And Matt just lost Martinez, though.
Yeah, but Martinez hasn't been on his team for about half the season for every year he's played, so it's not like he hasn't been winning 100 games with Alfredo this whole time anyway.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so I guess we can be pretty set on, if we've got Vegas and Montreal as the teams with byes, then you've got Havana versus 4 going into the versus Montreal sets. And then, I mean, this is the thing, is I have no idea. How do you make any kind of prediction when you don't know what you have no clue where 3 of the wild card teams are going to end up? Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, I was really hoping for a Jacksonville Charm City path for me, but now that
beat up
Tyler,
and losing.
Yeah, but I mean,
now Jacksonville's not losing, and
yeah. And I don't think I would still like to see Charm City win the division, because that would be my second round matchup if I, get by whoever the wild card battle is. But
yeah, I really think that if healthy, this is the best team I've put out there in our 5-year playoff run.
When are you getting Navarro back?
The kid comes back before the playoffs. I get both Chavez and Navarro before the playoffs, and Rutledge is healthy now. So all 3 of those top hitters are all going to be back.
And Crow.
Yeah. So, and then Crow should be healthy too, but he could get hurt at any time.
Yeah. You've come together.
Well, and if you and I play,
who are your?
If you and I play, I'm not sure anybody's going to score below 5 runs in any game. So
who do we think out of these teams, who's built for the playoffs? Like, what do we think? I mean, I've always been, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is some of the reason I have bad playoff success. But I always thought that the teams that do well in the regular season. First off, the playoffs is the crapshoot, right? That's what we've all kind of learned. As much as anybody wants to try to deny it, your chances of being a top seed of winning, even with a bye system, are not so much higher than the last seed that you really can make a lot of it.
Somewhere Billy Bean is nodding his head and agreeing with
it. It just isn't. Like, if you look, I think I did this, it's definitely the truth in Major League Baseball, but I thought maybe it'd be different for us, and I'm pretty sure that I did this, I did. I don't remember what I did with the data for it, but I did this maybe 7, 8 seasons ago and tried to see if there was any significant pattern to seeding and playoff wins, and it really wasn't there. Like, it just wasn't.
Yeah. I was going to say, I thought either you or Kyle had done a data analysis, and it basically turned out that, obviously the number 1 seeds win more often than, the number 4 seed, but
it's like 20.
the
It's like
percentage
20%
that they win is
more. It's not even like 2 times as much or 3 times as much. It's they all win like
right.
whatever. What, we have 16 teams going to the playoffs. Do we really have 16 teams going to the playoffs? No, 12.
12.
So whatever percentage that is per team, you get like maybe 5% more if you're the number 1 seed.
Right. On a series to series, game to game basis, there is basically just a coin flip with a slight advantage to the team that's better.
Right.
Well, because I mean, you could even argue like, okay, Matt's probably got the best team, but I just swept him not too long ago, and Tyler, you just took 3 out of 4 from him. So I mean,
right.
Who the hell knows?
So what do we think?
Yeah, 3 out of 4 without 2 of my best hitters.
So there's just been an idea that that's a regular season team and this is a playoff team, and traditionally that's been like the teams that have like better bullpens and better top end starting pitchers, because you can punt the number 5 starter, right? Like, you just that guy's not going to play. That's been the trick. Do we think that means anything? Has that just been a bunch of garbage people have been talking about for years? Does that matter, or are there really like, is it good to have 2 aces going to the playoffs? Does that make a difference?
I mean, it didn't hurt Atlantic City last year.
That's true.
I mean, they rode, though they're big because they were all healthy last year. They rode their big 3 to, I mean, what they lose in 6 games they won 2 series. So, I mean, I think there is something to it.
I don't know. Tyler, what you got?
I used to think that all the time playing OOTP. Until I won the championship with that team that I won. And really, we've had a lot of playoff success. I think there's only been one time that I haven't taken whatever series I lost in to the maximum number of games. And, I mean, we were up like 6 runs on Charm City last year in the 9th inning before blowing that one, or we might have been in the Landis. So I always thought it was, having 3 amazing starting pitchers and a good closer, and you could, fudge it on the offensive side, or having, those guys that are high BABIP that are consistent hitters. But I haven't had that. I mean, I've had to kind of build with what I could to try and do a quick rebuild, and I've had a lot less OBP and BABIP than I normally would like to, and we've still done well. So I think if you're building a team, you want to go with the 3 starters and a good bullpen, but it's kind of like that marginally better.
Yeah,
it's not a guarantee.
Is there anybody we think of?
I don't.
Sorry, man.
I was gonna say I think there's something more to building a playoff rotation than a playoff offense, because I think offense is going to be similar from regular season to playoffs. I think when you can, like you mentioned, you cut out the 5 or maybe even the 4th starter in the playoffs, depending on how aggressive you want to be. So there is more, I think, to a pitching staff built for the playoffs than an offense built for the playoffs.
I would say that, but if you look at some of it's kind of crazy. Like my best playoff performers over that run was Benjamin Franklin Pierce, and Norris Rutledge is hitting like 240 in my playoff run. So you just never know.
I've got a guy on my team. I picked him up. This is what put me over the edge of doing it. But if you look at Fernando Morenas, he has been like the series MVP 8 times. So whether or not this is now, Huntsville made the playoffs a lot, but that's still an absurd amount. And whether or not you believe it's valid, I do think there is something about certain players in OTP and quote-unquote clutch situations. And I wish that wasn't there, but I think it is.
I wish we had Ron to kind of help us out, but it seems like I remember that there's some sort of hidden.
There is in the
I don't know if it's hidden, clutch rating.
In the editor, there are like performance.
I don't even know if it's in the.
Is it even more hidden in the editor? I mean, there's.
Well, I think it's like in their personality stuff, right? And I have never paid attention to it.
There is stuff in there.
It'll be.
But I do find it bizarre that Moreno has 8 series MVPs. It's a lot.
I mean,
It's like
looking at
Bernie
me,
Morgan's
I would
bench.
have,
Like, just
yeah.
ridiculous. Sorry, man. I keep interrupting you.
None of my teams, I don't think, has ever been in the playoffs except for Gilstrom. So I could have a whole bunch of playoff stars, or I could have a whole bunch of guys that forget how to play baseball.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
No, that's pretty exciting. I mean, I think you're it on that side, right? For like teams we're excited to see make the playoffs. I mean, Charm City because they're expansions.
Well, not everybody's excited, Ted.
I am. I'm excited. It's different, right? I would like. We've unfortunately we haven't had a lot of parity for about 5 years. It's pretty much been the same guys, and that's really not what you like to see. You like to see a little bit more change at the top. Hopefully that cycle turns around soon.
I'm just happy because I predicted on the one we did preseason where I said I'm going to be very angry if I'm not in a wild card spot this year. So I'm really glad that I didn't look like a giant asshole by saying that.
Well, let's move over to the Frick League pretty quick here. But one more question before we get there, just to get it. Are you guys 3-man rotation or 4-man rotation in the playoffs? Which do you prefer?
For me, because I have a fairly even and balanced rotation, I'm probably going to go 4 because all my guys are roughly the same as far as what they've done.
Yeah, so. I don't have an ace. I don't have a guy that I am trying to get back up and get starting again, really. So I'll probably end up going with a 4-man rotation.
It hurts you to go 3. I mean, I usually end up going 3. But unless I, like this year, I'm probably going to use a 4-man because no one's been significantly better than anyone else except Ramos.
I mean, I don't think it hurts you, but it just depends on your team. I mean, that it's so team dependent. If I had a couple guys that were standing out, I would not hesitate to use a 3-man rotation if that's what your question is.
Rest?
Like,
I mean, that's always been kind of the thing in the back of my mind is are these guys getting enough? Like, because they're pitching essentially, the playoffs have so many off days that they're pitching on 3 days. 3 and 4 days rest. I mean, sometimes they get a normal rest. Sometimes they're only getting 3 days, and you just wonder if does that matter in this game? I don't know.
Well, we'll see because I'm also beating the crap out of my guys in the regular season, so we'll have to see if that carries over in the playoffs at all.
I think as long as their stamina is back up close to 100% or at 100%, it doesn't really matter how many days rest they're on. So some guys with higher endurance will recover quicker, and you can run them out there more often.
All right. Well, let's before we just run some, let's get totally off topic here. Let's run over to the Frick. Right. I do think the playoff picture is a little more interesting. The question in the Johnson is really the seeding, not who's going to be in. Although Atlantic City again, they could. It's not possible that Tyler, you have to just forget how to hit again, but you did it once already. It's not impossible for them to get in, but I think it's unlikely. I think the Frick's a little bit different. I don't know what's going to happen in the Frick. It's Yellow Springs has a bye, and then Louisville definitely has a wild card spot, and then I don't think you can say anyone else is in the playoffs with any huge degree of certainty.
I would agree. I'm inclined to say the most confident I feel is that Long Beach will not make it.
Because they've been so bad. They've been trending down.
Well, and also losing Greenwood and the rest of their pitching staff sucks. Right. So I think that was a death knell for them. But other than that, I mean, even Omaha, where the flying hell did they come from?
Right. And they're not impossible. They're 3 games out. I mean, and that's the thing is that, I mean, a month ago, I thought I had like an 8-game lead on the division. I'm down to, I think, 4, and I'm winning about 35% of my games for the last 2 months. I don't even know if I'm going to make the playoffs. I think I'm probably being overly pessimistic because it's my own team, but, like, if Calgary could stop being kind of up and down, they would have already taken the division from me a while ago. But they're only a game and a half up on the last playoff spot. I mean,
yeah, and with Omaha, we were talking if it's possible for them to get in. They closed with 3 at Twin Cities and 4 at Calgary, which you don't like those series being on the road. But I do kind of like having to play the teams that you're trying to catch.
Right. There's enough of a chance there that they could knock one of those guys out. I don't. Does Seattle get in? If they do, is it Calgary that's out, or do Seattle and Omaha get in? Then who's out? near Calgary, and you know,
I'm
Madison,
inclined to say that
Twin City.
Omaha falls. I'm inclined to say that Omaha falls just short, but I don't feel confident in that at all.
No, they're on fire right now.
Yeah, anything can happen in this game, but I just look at the fact that they have to jump, 3 teams in these last 2 weeks? That's a lot to ask. Even just, the number of games isn't insurmountable, but they've got to surpass Seattle, Long Beach, Calgary, and one of Twin Cities or Madison.
No,
or is
no. It's just those 3.
Just those 3, okay.
Just they have to pass, those 3
Yeah,
teams.
one of the other 3. So, you're counting on them to go continue their hot streak, but then also all 3 of those teams to be cold enough for them to pass them.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the schedule these guys are playing down the road, and really nobody hasn't doesn't look like there's a big difference between teams. They've all got a couple good teams and a couple non-competitive teams, or a couple teams that are out of it. It's
It looks like the easiest schedules are Twin Cities and Seattle, but
they're not. Yeah, they're not.
Although Seattle getting a bunch of Long Beach, I think helps because again, I'm at this point I'm not a believer in Long Beach, but I could be proven horrifically wrong on that.
All right, so if you had to pick, is anybody taking somebody that's not in right now?
So who do we have that's not? You got Long Beach and Seattle not
Omaha.
In Omaha.
In Omaha.
If you're feeling ambitious.
I don't know. I would like to say Seattle gets in. I'm just trying to look right now. When was the last time? So they were in the playoffs in 29 and 30.
I'm inclined to say Seattle jumps Calgary.
You think?
But you look, Calgary, their problem is they got to go for 4 games to Yellow Springs.
Right, that's what I was looking at. That's kind of a buzzsaw, right? Like that. It depends. Yeah, and that's early enough that Ron's probably not shutting it down yet.
And then they go 4 home against Madison, and then 4 home against Omaha, who's probably the hottest team in the league right now.
Yeah.
So that's not an easy. I think Calgary is probably a better team than Seattle, but Seattle's got a lot more favorable road coming in. But I wouldn't be surprised to be completely wrong on that too. So I feel much less confident about that than I do about anything over in the Johnson.
All right, so
yeah, I would say if you feel that Long Beach is cooked, Seattle is your team that's going to be in. They've got 6 against Long Beach before playing Des Moines and Mexico City. So if anybody, if you think Long Beach is done, then you're talking about Seattle playing against all non-playoff teams and really 2 of the teams that are struggling the most.
Yeah, and I feel I didn't even see their schedule when I made my statement, but I feel even better about it now.
So you're thinking, and Randy, you're thinking Seattle does knock out Calgary, and the rest kind of stays about where it is.
Yeah, just because I think those other guys have enough of a cushion. 2 games isn't a ton for Madison and Twin Cities, but and I think that's enough to where, they may fall. I wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle jump one of them into the 3 seed, but I don't think 2 teams fall out of the playoffs that are in right now.
Tyler, do you think the same, or do you think you're not going to pick anything with confidence here? Because I don't really know that I can.
I really think Seattle's going to get in. I'm just trying to figure out who would be my pick to fall out.
I think Calgary's going to win the division. Seattle's going to take the last wild card spot, and I'm going to be out. So
I think
you're just trying to reverse jinx yourself.
Yeah, I'm not really doing that on purpose. I'm really frustrated with how we've been playing. This isn't when my offense does this. So this is why I lose the first 6 weeks of the season. There's this threshold that if I get below that, if I'm not scoring 4 runs a game, if I get down to 3.7, I just lose every single game. And that's what I've been though I think I might be the worst team in baseball since the All-Star break. It's bad.
I think Ron will help you out. I think. And plus, how do you close with 7 straight home games against Vancouver?
The schedule needs to get fixed. Half the teams in the league play 7 and 8 teams against one team at the end of the year. So, am I a better home team than a road team?
But usually they at least flip venues. You got literally.
Got a
It's
giant
so dumb
homestand.
because you play.
I don't know that helps me.
You play three. You play 3 games. Take against Vancouver. Take a break and then play 4 more against Vancouver in the same park.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
I think just because of the way everything's breaking for Chris, and it's like all of his best laid plans keep falling apart for no reason, I would say Madison
Falls out
somehow
of the
has a
playoffs.
Pythagorean
Just-
record of about 92 wins and
Just
still
because
misses the
Scott hates Chris
playoffs.
Wilson, that's possible. Like that's
I think that could be possible. I hate to see it because I think he's just out of nowhere. His rebuild stalled, and all of a sudden his team just got good, and now all of a sudden his team is not winning games that they should be winning.
Well, Ted, you would like to see that because you got 4 against them coming up. So if you wouldn't mind seeing that, you can help him along that path.
he's already like 5 below his Pythagorean like projected wins, which is hilarious because the team that's right behind him or tied with him right now is 6 below theirs. Both better than both better than Stu's Sluggers, but I don't know that I believe that. I think the Sluggers were really underachieving to start out because that's an extremely talented team. That division's disgusting, by the way. They keep joking. They're not joking. They keep claiming to be the best division in baseball, and we all keep saying, "Well, what about?" But they're right, and it's gross. Like they're considerably better. Like even Des Moines is not a bad team. They're not a great team, but they're not a bad team. And like Mexico City is not, for a bottom dweller, is easily better than any of the other bottom dwellers in the league.
Yeah, I really thought Rockville and Nashville were going to be better this year, and we would have a claim on that as the Pacific or the Atlantic. But yeah, I don't think that's the case at all. The Heartland division really seems to be the class of the league right now.
All right.
I would put our top 3 up against anybody's, but man, in the Southern, our 4 through 7 are just not good.
I don't know about your 4 through 7. I think Phoenix has a lot of potential. They just can't get them. Like what would it have been like if they hadn't had the pitching injuries this year? Because they can hit, and they can hit like crazy. Like I don't know if they can right now, but they're going to be able to soon. Well, they can't hit this year. Wow. How are you 4th in home runs and 10th in runs scored? Oh, because nobody gets on base and
because nobody gets on
That's
base.
pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So we've got Yellow Springs has a bye. I don't believe in myself, but you guys seem to. So you're giving me the other bye.
You're fine, Ted. Stop it.
I'm gonna end up out of the playoffs. It's gonna happen.
Dude, Stu's gonna be the top wild card. I mean, I don't see anybody catching
Stu's
him.
got wild card 1. Can you say anything after that? I mean, I think this then becomes like the other league where everybody's within a win of each other, and who knows?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a crapshoot. But if I were to go off of what I said, I'd say Stu gets the number 1 wild card. I think Twin Cities sneaks in with the number 2 wild card, and then you end up with Calgary and Seattle somewhere in the 3 or 4.
I'm gonna say your same top 2. I think Seattle jumps up into 3, and I think Chris holds on for the number 4 spot.
Right. I think it actually stays as it is. I don't think anybody. I think the teams that are in now are going to be the teams that are in because while I don't think Seattle is undeserving, I just don't. I don't know. I really. I don't.
And I think Omaha falls a game short. I think they fall 1 game behind.
So you're just down on Long Beach. That's what you're doing. You're just Long Beach is going to lose every game for the rest of the year.
Not every game, but I'm not sure they're going to get to 5. I don't think they will finish over 500. Put it down on the book. I think they will be 81 and 81 at best.
I like it. I like the bold prediction. I'm sure Steven does not, but he probably is already so frustrated with things this year that your prediction does not matter. Oops, sorry.
I was just gonna say, and by the way, just how about like everything? Speaking of things breaking wrong, it seems like Steven's team things just are not going well for him and his rebuild either. Even though he's won a championship, it's like all of those guys that were studs and developed into studs,
they all lumped
as hitters. They all just lumped, and his pitchers lumped, and it's like everybody at 24 just decided to lump for him.
Yeah, he's actually. We'll get back to this later, but yeah, we'll get it. So we skipped something, and we got to go back. We'll do this for the Frick now first, and then go back to the Johnson. Because we were trying to get that idea. The reason for the question about is there such a thing as a better playoff build for a team? Because that was kind of segue from that into who do you like, and like who do you think's got a better? And not necessarily the problem is we can't pick the path. If we could get the matchups figured out a little bit, but I think with a system like we have where there's so many wild cards, it's hard to get the matchups figured out enough to make predictions. But I would really like to go back to more than 4 divisions at some point. I know we don't have the math for it right now, but it would be nice. Not 4 divisions, sorry, 3 divisions, but maybe 4. I don't know. In the Frick, I like Yellow Springs. I just do, and I know they're the best, and picking the best is like they only slightly, but they're just so good this year.
Yeah, and well, and having Lelouch and Chavez, we were talking earlier about when do you go 3 versus 4-man rotation in the playoffs. This might be a case where you go 3-man.
Right. I don't know. Anybody else that you think on this side is particularly good in good shape?
I mean, as much as it pains me to say it, you have to look at Stu in Louisville. Like they're just like the proverbial fly in the ointment, just all the time.
And they've got
the thing it'll be interesting about Stu. He's got a lot of young pitchers.
Right, and does that matter in the playoffs? If it does, if there's like a pressure thing or
we don't know. They could be playoff studs, and we just don't know it yet. But I mean, I think it's an unknown that's worth.
Right. This isn't exactly the same team that he's won with, right? Like there's a lot of turnover on the pitching side, so that's a good point.
But I mean, I'm still inclined to say that. I mean, he's probably the number 2 at this point.
Yeah, I really.
Although my dark horse is Twin Cities because that offense is impressive.
It is. I just don't they've got I think 1 pitcher right now.
Yeah.
Actually, no pitchers. Their 1 pitcher that I trust is Chris Kelly, but he's 21 and this is his first year, and he's not totally developed. It'll be a shame if he doesn't figure his changeup out because he is just could be an all-time great if he gets that changeup figured out. Otherwise, he'll just be very, very good for a long time.
Yeah. But I mean,
But they cannot with that offense. They can knock anybody out of the playoffs. You're right. I mean,
they can win a whole bunch of 8-5 games and say, you know what, take it, deal with it.
Right. It's hard to do in the playoffs, but they can do it. It's hard to do for an entire playoff run, but any one series they can beat anyone. So.
Yeah. But I think Ron's the clear favorite there, even more so than Matt is out in the Johnson. I think Ron's.
You have any differing thoughts there, Tyler? Or are you pretty much?
No, I think that Yellow Springs is the team to beat for sure, and it'll be tough to overcome Louisville for those wild card teams, in that first round. So they'll be there. I really hope Ron does well. They've been deserving of good results in the playoffs, and you hope that a team like Twin Cities does well, and you'd like to see like Nathan do well with Seattle. It's a team that's always above 500 and just never really draws any headlines. It'd be neat to see them do well too, but I think it goes through Yellow Springs.
Yeah. So we skipped this part for the Johnson. Let's go back over there. Early on, one of you, I think Randy, I think it was you that was talking about Las Vegas being the favorite, and I kind of dithered about that. I don't think they are. Not because they're not great, but they never win. Ever. Like Rec's ability to have 100-win teams that get knocked out in the second round of the playoffs is amazing. Like and I realize it's all just bad, stupid, terrible, dumb luck, but at this point it just makes it hard for me to pick them for no reason with any sort of basis in reality, just because I just don't want.
Well, my counterpoint is who's better.
Well, and that's the thing is you don't have a good. There's not another team out of.
I mean, guys. Montreal's got a pitcher and a half. I mean,
right. Charm City's
in an offense
been injured to death. I guess Howard's got a point here. Jacksonville's not looking too bad when they're healthy. I mean, they've got starters.
And I'm not. I mean, if we end up playing in the first round, Tyler, that might be one of the best playoff matchups of either division because I think we might be 2-3. I mean, as far as teams behind Matt,
as currently constructed after the injuries, maybe.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we are going to be hitting our stride right at the right time, which means we'll lose in 3 games in the first round. But
Yeah,
uh,
that's how that works.
but if
But
you look at
I
you,
think Montreal is going to be tough too. I mean, despite the fact that, like I said, there you have a pitcher and a half that I would halfway trust. That offense is just so good that again, it just might not matter.
See, but I just don't like your pitching that much either. And, I just really,
I'm not in love with. I have a bunch of above average guys.
well,
Like I don't have any guys that I would remotely call an ace. I've got basically 5 guys that are 2 to 4 starters, like second to fourth starters. That's it.
yeah, thinking back on preseason predictions in the media guide, Jacksonville is going to make the playoffs as the team with the most extra inning losses and the most one-run losses in the entire league. And I think that's what's going to sink us in the end is our bullpen not being up to snuff. Even though we've got Sanderson, he has really struggled since he's come over. And that was something that was pointed out that our bullpen was going to be a question. I think that's going to be the thing that holds us back.
I've got 2 guys in my bullpen that I trust, and the rest are, I mean, I praying. That's why my starters average almost 7 innings a start in the regular season because I just don't trust my bullpen.
no, I forgot that I wrote those previews. I need to go back and look in pretty soon here and see how I did.
I have Ramirez, who I think you had at one point, Ted.
I know I just saw that he's your closer. Good for Miguel Ramirez.
Yeah, and he's been doing
good for him.
And he just got a contract extension too. I just gave him some money.
Oh, nice guy. I
And then I've got Ramirez and I've got Gibson, another guy who I know you love. But beyond that, I mean, dear God,
Gibson's hurt now too. Well, he's just dead arm.
Well, but he'll be back. He'll be back before.
Oh, I don't know though. He has
and then
a dead arm injury and his stuff just dropped. He could be useless now.
Well, he's still more useful than anybody else I have. I've started an 18-year-old guy that I drafted this year as one of my setup men.
Well,
he was like a 5th-round pick this year.
That's fine.
Literally.
It's okay. That's a good plan. I think that's how you win. You keep him guessing. I mean, there's
no
scouting report on the guy.
He's 18 years old, and he was the 145th pick in the draft in this past 2033 draft, and he's my setup man in the 8th inning. What the hell is wrong with my team?
Yeah, you don't have pitching. That's what's wrong with your team. It's just in case you're wondering. Actually, you have a lot of injured pitchers, too. You'd be different without some injuries, but we all would. Tyler, I think I cut you off again.
Yeah, but
That's fine. I was just going to say, I think I'll go out of left field from where we've been talking. If my pick for the Johnson League is going to be John and Montreal, I think that offense is going to get hot for some reason. And even though they traded the best offensive player in the league, they're going to still find a way to make it through Las Vegas.
I think it would be some sort of karmic justice if it came down to John and I for the Johnson title, and one of the players involved in that trade won league MVP. I have no idea which one, but it would make me laugh.
That would be nice. It'd be pretty cool. I'm actually pretty high on New Orleans. And again, this is pretty predictable. I'm a pitching guy. I don't like their defense. I'm a pitching and defense guy, but I do like their starting pitching. And
despite the fact that 2 of them are on the shelf with Dada's going out and Alfonso.
I don't care about Dada's. Like I don't care about Dada's. I don't care about, I don't even know how the hell Miguel Dada's did what he did this year with his injuries and ratings. It's pretty amazing. Good for him. But Freddie Delgado's great. Hector Almiral is another very good pitcher. Dave Martin's good. Sergio Franco is another good. I mean, they've got better. This is one of the reasons I think I predicted them to bounce back. Is I think last year injuries just derailed them. They've got good starters, and while their offense isn't what New Orleans had in the past, they've still got some pretty good guys, and some of them are they hit the ball hard. They're not great, but they're solid. There's some. This isn't like a punchless offense. So I think I really do kind of like New Orleans. And I think I'm going to go Jacksonville as my other one because I do think that you've gotten healthy, Tyler, at the right time, and that with that offense, if your pitchers can just pitch at all, you should be okay. And the difference between your team and Charm City and Montreal is Montreal has no pitching, except for 1.5 arms, and Charm City is super injured. And Randy Havana, I'd kind of put you in the same boat. You got a great offense, but your pitchers are such big question marks. I don't know that I can rely on you. But it's close. This isn't like a thing where I'm convinced of this. I just figured I had to pick something.
Oh, I think the Johnson's a lot more condensed than the Frick is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I wouldn't be surprised to see anybody but Charm City in the Landis for us.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Charm City. I just think that they've been so hurt that it's hard to.
That's why it would surprise me if they were healthy. I mean, I think we could easily send anybody. I think with their injuries, it would be really surprising to see them.
If they were healthy, I think they might be favored. But
yeah, I don't disagree with you.
I mean, this could be the end of Alfredo Salazar. Who knows how he comes back from this? But he's 32 and tore a muscle in his back. This could be it. It could be the end of him. Who knows? Okay, so that's kind of where we are, right? We got through. That was the big goal here. We're about 30 minutes in or so, somewhere in there. We were going to try to get through playoffs. So the next is the thing of the idea I stole from Effectively Wild, which I now listen to because I think it was Stephen Lane that pointed out it was such a great podcast. And so I listened to one, and I was like, this is a great podcast. These guys are big nerds. And
thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, it's fun, and they have good guests. And it's if you're not listening to it and you have time to listen to a podcast about baseball, they do some cool stuff. It's a pretty good listen. But anyway, and Tyler heard this episode too. But about 5 years ago, they did a thing that we're going to try to mimic, where they basically tried to predict. They had 3 people try to predict the playoffs in no particular order, teams that would win the World Series or cross the Landis in the next 5-year span. So what are the teams right now that look set up to be the best over the next 5-year span? You're not trying to say this team's going to win this year. It's just the whole time, if you had to bet on some teams, who are you going to take? And then the second half of it is in the next 4-year window. And neither of this is counting this season. So we're saying 2034 on. In the next 4-year window, which teams will not be in the playoffs at all. And the reason I got cut down to a 4-year window is that, at least in Major League Baseball, there is no correlation between year 0 and year 5 in terms of record in making the playoffs. It just doesn't exist. Now, there's some different stuff about farm systems, but at least in terms of the Major League club, it gets really murky after about 4 years. I don't think we've got that kind of parity right now, which is unfortunate. I think we probably could go a little bit longer, but just to stick with what they did, we're going to go with 4 years. So let's start with, and we'll have Tyler go first. Let's start with your teams that you think are most likely to win a Landis in years 2034 through 38.
Yeah, the obvious two are Vegas and Yellow Springs. I think those two are locks for most of us here. After that, I'm going to actually pick Twin Cities. I think they've got a shot in the next couple of years. Charm City. And the last one, I'm torn between a couple of teams. I like what Havana's been doing, except for the pitching. I worry about the pitching going forward, but I think I've shown that you can out-hit your pitching. The other one I'm going to go with, I think is, let me take a look at one thing in their system still. Yeah. No, I'm going to go Havana.
Well, I'm flattered. Thank you, Tyler. I'm flattered.
The other one that I was looking at was possibly Omaha, but I just don't know how much better they're going to be in the short term.
So you said Vegas, Yellow Springs, Twin Cities, Charm City, and then Havana was your 5. Okay.
Yep.
What do you got, Randy?
Similar, actually. Vegas and Yellow Springs, which to the surprise of nobody. My third pick would actually be Montreal, because I was so kind enough to give John some nice prospects for the next few years in exchange for maybe the best player in the game. I think that offense is just incredible, and he can craft some pitching out of something to get it done. I was torn. The next 3 teams for 2 spots. I mean, Twin Cities, Louisville, just because Stu's a magician as much as we all hate to admit it, and he'll pull some crap out and wouldn't surprise anybody. And then biasly myself, just because I have a fairly young team that's still developing, and I think my pitching will improve, or I've shown that I will find ways to improve it by acquiring guys that aren't on the roster right now. If I had to leave one out of there, I would probably leave Twin Cities out and then go with myself and Louisville for the 4 and 5 spots. But it wouldn't surprise me to see Twin Cities either, just because they've got a really young and talented offense and some pitchers coming up to back up that offense.
Well, you guys are going to think I'm a nut job because I've got a little bit different lineup than you guys. I have some that you have and some that you don't. I think I might be looking a little bit too far down the road and not paying attention to the next couple of years. I have Louisville, which has been a popular pick. They've got good young bats. They've got good young arms. They've got lots of both. That's a good formula. I've got New Orleans for the same reason. They've got talented young pitchers, and they have some kids in the minors that aren't even there yet in terms of bats, I believe. And they've got that young catcher and a young first baseman and some other guys, and they've got guys on the roster. So I think, basically what as we said earlier, we're just trying to pick teams that are going to be in the playoffs every year and then hope our luck works out is what we're doing. But I've got Twin Cities for the same sort of reasons. What they don't have this year is pitching, but their best prospect is a very high-end pitcher, and he's almost ready. And then they've got, Kelly, who's there and who's going to develop a little bit more. So I think they're about to solve their pitching problem. And with the offense they have, they're in great shape. Montreal, pretty much for the reasons Randy has. Gilstrom's gone and Guerrero's getting old, but they've got some good young bats coming up, and they've got a couple arms now in Kondo and what's his name? The kid that's on their roster now, Jubal Troop, who are pretty solid.
Yeah.
And then I kind of went a little bit all over the place, right? So I've got one spot now to wedge in Vegas, Charm City, Yellow Springs, and Havana. And I didn't know what to do with that spot. How do you not have Vegas on your list? That seems insane. On the other hand, you look at Yellow Springs, and that pitching core of theirs is old. Chavez has been injured a bunch of times. He's 31. Rick Ward is 31. Lots of injuries. Lelouch is 28, and he's still got, he's the one that's probably around for a little bit. But let's say that, because they're good. They're going to be in the playoffs the next couple of years. But is Yellow Springs going to have any pitching in 36 at all? They might not have it.
Well, they've got Alfama coming up, who is, he's not going to be an ace, but that's certainly, I think, an improvement on Rick Ward in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I was looking at more. I think Yellow Springs' window kind of closes before some of the other teams Tyler and I mentioned, but I think they're
so good right now,
better positioned to win the next few years than some of the. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I put Yellow Springs on the list. Is I think over the next 3 years going forward, they're probably one of the top 2 or 3 teams to win Atlantis.
And I totally see that. And looking at Vegas, I've got pretty much the same question, but in reverse. Vegas has some good young pitchers. Romero is 29, so he'll be decent for a few years. Velasco is pretty young still. Chang's young, LeGrand young, Kim's young. That's great. But they've really been carried by this monster offense they've had forever. And Alfredo Martinez never plays a whole season, and he's 28. Ritter is 28. Gulliver's 32. Hank Brewer is 28.
Sweet World's 24, though.
Sweet World's 24, but he's one guy, right? So they're again these next couple of years they're fine, but 20. It's Matt. He'll figure it out, but he has nothing in the minors. Like just
No, he's got. Yeah, and ironically, the one guy he does have in the minors position wise is Claudio Perez, who's blocked by Brewer.
yeah. So on the other hand, I'm going to go with Vegas over Yellow Springs, which isn't what I had intended to do, but I think they will consistently be in the playoffs, and so it's hard to pick against them, which is the exact opposite of what I said previously, where I said I didn't care that they were consistently the number one seed because they never won. So if there's anything, I am completely inconsistent, and I don't know. I just pick one thing one day and one day the other. So I'm the idiot who left Yellow Springs off their list. And Charm City has been really hurt by injuries. But we did this. There's so much variability with this. As Tyler was saying before the show, when they did this 5 years ago with Major League Baseball, the three guys I think picked 13 different teams or 12 different teams between the three of them, and only one of those teams won a World Series. I think we're a little bit more predictable than that in this league, but it's. I mean, 2 years ago, if we'd done this, everybody would have been like, "Oh, Long Beach is going to win like 3." And look what's happened to them. They've just been destroyed by bad luck and lack of development. So who knows with this group?
Yeah, I think a year ago, had you asked the same question a year ago, I probably would have had Vancouver as one of those teams that you're thinking about putting in the top 5. Right. And some injury plagued seasons and, some sell-offs later. Now you're questioning, well, in 5 years, are they going to be back to that level or not?
Right. And I mean, this was their window, and they've just been run over by injuries. It's really
and nobody. You wouldn't have even considered me even last year. Definitely not before that.
No, right, and things can change, right? Trades, other stuff. I mean, when you took that team over, it was that's kind of an okay minor league system, and there was nothing on the major league roster that was really that impressive, except for one or two really overpaid players, and here you are. So these can change a lot. And this, like everything else we do, this is all for fun and isn't intended to say someone's doing a great job and sometimes we do say someone's doing a great job. But it's not sitting there intended to go, someone's doing a terrible job or they're dumb or they don't know what they're doing or anything like that. It's just, it's no fun if we don't put ourselves on the line a little bit to try to pick something out.
Not to win a Landis, but a team to keep an eye on for the next few years is Edmonton.
Yeah.
Because Lynch is already one of the best pitchers in the league, and he's only been up for like 2/3 of a season. And he's got like 6 outfielders in the minors who are capable of being all-star players. Now, they're all outfielders, so he's going to have to trade some of them for other positions.
Yeah, but the only reason you don't put them on this list is like 2 years down the road, they might be the number one team on this list. It's just they right now.
Yeah, Well, and the thing with all those outfielders, except for Dalrymple or however you'd say his name, none of those guys are within a year of the majors. Those outfielders I mentioned.
Yeah, so, the thing about Edmonton is it's so far down the road. I mean, they might in 4 years they might be that team like Long Beach was a couple of years ago, where you're saying they're going to win multiple championships, or a couple of guys lump and somebody else gets injured, and the next thing you know, they're still sitting at the bottom of their league. It's just so far down the road. I have a lot of confidence in Brandon. He's in the league that I commish, and he's done this with another team. They weren't quite as bad as Edmonton was, but he's built them into a championship team, and they've since fallen off a few years after he won a couple of championships. But I do think he has the chops. So yeah, I think he has the chops to get it done if things break right, but they are so far away that that's a lot of things that have to break right for them to be considered a favorite.
I think in this same 5-year window, I think they'll be in the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be ready for the Landis quite yet.
It'll be towards the end, right? Like, do you think they're going to be any good next year? Like, they'll be bad.
No. But I'm saying no. Like, I'm talking like 37 or 38.
So we're all pretty much talking about the same teams. It's good none of us are sitting there going, really? You think that team? I think this is the easier half of this traditionally is to kind of look at success.
Yeah, there was one other team that we haven't talked about that I think deserves to be mentioned. I don't think anybody talked about them, but New Orleans.
Oh, I did. New Orleans was one of my 5.
Yeah. Oh, you did say New Orleans. Okay, I didn't.
Yep. They're the one I dumped Yellow Springs for, because I think over the next 5 years, I don't think like the next 2 years, but I really don't see Yellow Springs being that good 2 years from now. Now, Ron's good, and he may change the team, but as it's currently constructed, their offense will still be fine in a couple of years, but that pitching could really implode. Like,
I had New Orleans kind of in just a tick behind that group I was talking about for that last spot between myself, Louisville, and Twin Cities.
you know,
I think they're just a tick behind there, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them.
all right, so
Because I think, yeah.
is there anybody that's
And nobody
on
mentioned
everyone's
nobody
list?
mentioned any team in the Pacific, by the way.
I know.
Just
Well,
wasn't even.
I'm aware. We're not that good right now. A few years ago, we were one of the more competitive divisions. We're not. You know.
Oh, it's still competitive.
Well, it's not the same kind of
interdivision
competitive. We're competing for the best among second tier.
When the league was restructured after expansion, the Pacific Division looked like a meat grinder those first 2 years.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what's happened is Calgary's lost some. They've replaced it, but they lost some high end talent. Seattle's got old. Long Beach just got. I mean, that's the big thing, right? Is Long Beach is just poor luck, and Brett's just horrible pitching injuries. Valencia and Edmonton have been kind of in a rebuild phase, and I've just been kind of reaping the benefits of all that with good but not great teams. I thought last year's team was legitimately a great team. This year's club, I'm just winning because no one else is. That's really pretty much all there is.
Going back to your question of was there anybody on all three lists? I think the only team was Vegas.
No,
I think there were a bunch
Vegas,
of there were a bunch
I
of
put
teams
Vegas on my list, so okay.
There were a bunch of teams on two lists. Like Louisville was on both mine and Tyler's. Twin Cities was on both mine and Tyler's.
Right, and my
Montreal was on yours and mine,
which would put them on all three. And Twin Cities was your first off, which would have put them on all three.
Yeah.
No, I had So
yeah, I did not have Louisville on mine. I just can't put Stu on my list. I can't.
Yeah, no, that's
just joking. I had I like Stu a lot, but I like to say that I can't root for him.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's totally fair. He doesn't want you to root for him, I'm sure.
No.
So the next part's, I think, actually the more fun part of this, because picking the winners is maybe nicer, but I think it's kind of, oh my god, now I'm just a horrible evil person for saying this next part's fun, but whatever, maybe I'm just a horrible evil person.
Pick the teams that suck.
What are the teams that really just look like there's no way they're going to be in the playoffs during the next 4 seasons? Do we want to do 4 or do we want to do 5?
Do 5. It's more fun to insult more people.
I don't know if I might have to change my list. I made my list for 4. Can we do 4?
We can do 4.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So
well, let's face it. We said 5 for the last one. Then we each listed like 6 or 7 anyway. So.
No. I meant years.
Official list.
For 4 years. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So 4 years works. I thought you meant teams. I was going to say we listed
34 through 37 the teams that will not make the playoffs. I went last time, so I'll go first. I think the one that jumps out to me is San Antonio. Calvarusso's done a great job with aging pitchers for a long time. He got killed by injuries in this year, and which was kind of a I'm going to try to keep the gang together one last time sort of year, and he's really been emptying out his minors to do that. And he's bad this year. And Ornelas and Ramirez are done. They're done. He's not going to get any return value for them. They're out of the system. It looks like Wick survived his injury. Their current team, they've got guys like Clausen, who's okay, and Nguyen, who's okay, and Tobias and Wick and Warren. Maybe Buckland. They don't have much in the minors that looks like it's going to matter in the next couple of years. And to get in the playoffs, they're going to have to beat Havana, New Orleans, and Las Vegas, or get 3 wild cards out of one division. And I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. And we're all going to go through stretches like this. So, but I think they look like they're in bad shape. I have picked Atlantic City. Essentially, those contracts are going to kill them for 3 more years. They don't have a lot. They again have some older parts. After guys like Cannon and Permitier and maybe Dusty Welch that's in the minors. It's going to be up soon. I can't read my writing, but they do have another good young starter. They don't. Oh wait, no. They. I don't see them turning this around. I think that's but that's not a surprise to anybody. I don't think. Huntsville. I wrote before that they should have started rebuilding 2 or 3 years ago, and they didn't. And now when they finally made some trades, but some of these guys have held on to so long that they didn't get much return value for them. They have a pretty ugly looking minor league system. They'll get back there, but it's going to be a bit. I also picked, as much as I like Beachkey, I picked Hawaii for kind of the same reasons. They kind of kept doing a partial rebuild year after year after year, and now they have a very old roster, and they have guys that are really far away, and some of their best prospects are really scary. Like, I liked Charlie Ironknife when he was drafted, but he has now been in the minors for 2 full seasons, and during that time, he has developed 1 motion.
Which for a knuckleballer is bad.
Yeah, right? Like, that's really scary. I didn't like when you made that trade initially, and then you mentioned that, and I was like, oh yeah, huh? Wow, that could be ugly. I had a tough time with the 4th spot. I don't think there's an obvious other team that looks like they're in trouble.
You mean 5th?
The 5th spot.
Fifth.
The 5th spot. Yeah, the 5th spot. So my 4 so far were Huntsville, Atlantic City, San Antonio, Hawaii. The last one was tough. I think there's a little bit of a step up here. I eventually went with Valencia. Again, they've got a couple good young players, and they've got some really good young bats, and this could be a bit of a stretch because Mahaffey's going to be really good, and Zalapa I don't think is a shortstop, but he's a great bat, and Rivera is, I don't know how he might have to be a DH with Mahaffey playing, but he's good, and they've got 2 good young starters, so that's a core, but that's it. There's nothing else. So I don't know that you can make the playoffs with 5 players, and Lee is not super active in the trade market, so kind of what comes through his system is what he's got. And I don't see a whole lot else coming out of that system right away. But I considered Mexico City, because they've got a bunch of random different ages of players, but Fred does a really good job, and I think he'll turn things around. Des Moines I considered, because they've got some older parts that unfortunately looks like they might be ending a window, but, and the other one I thought about was Long Beach. You mentioned this earlier, is they've really just run into some bad luck. And they've kind of emptied their minors to try to fix that, and it just keeps getting worse for them. So they could be in trouble.
Well, yeah, and one thing that we've seen out of Lane is he's not afraid to go the longer rebuild.
Right. But
to try and get long-term success.
I went with Valencia out of that group. It could be the wrong pick. But Randy, what you got?
I mean, kind of like you, Huntsville. Huntsville was the one that jumped out to me just because they just started their rebuild. All their good prospects are relief pitchers, and they didn't get much back in the deals that they did make.
Right, and I didn't. There's a couple times where I thought like those deals, man, they might have tried to get a little bit more, but they held on to those players for so long that I don't know they had a lot of value.
He could have gotten more for Lacaz than he did, and I say that as a guy who traded for him. I mean, I gave up Ludwig Charles, who is okay, and then my closer who got popped for PEDs last year and is 27 years old and has 1 year of major league experience. So woohoo!
Yeah.
You should have gotten more.
He kind of got screwed over by Sanderson too. His value plummeted when he had that stretch of like 6 or 8 weeks where he had like an 11 ERA, which it wasn't just a fluke. I mean, it was his FIP was bad too, which dropped his WAR. So now all of a sudden he can't use a compensation pick as leverage. And I mean, I don't know if he would have been able to do much better than what I traded him, which was just a swing man and okay relief prospect, not even a very good relief prospect. So, or hitting prospect. I don't know if he could have really gotten much more out of somebody like Sanderson. And yeah, he could have gotten more out of Lacaz, but it's one of those things. It's like, it's better to trade him a year early and for a little bit less than maybe you thought than to hold on to him
so you get nothing
for another year thinking that you're going to get a better
Yeah,
return, and then you get nothing.
okay.
So
And then, like you, Ted, Atlantic City, I did their preview before last season, and I said they have a 2-year window, and then those contracts are going to kill them.
Yeah.
Well, they did well in year one. I mean, they got to the Gahagan, they got to within 2 games of the Landis, but with Lopez getting hurt this year, I mean, they have, I think, over 70 million locked up in 3 pitchers for the next 4 years.
yeah, I think it's
And-
like 65, 70, and 65.
Yeah, and I mean, Cannon's great. I mean, I think anybody would love to have. I think any of us would probably take Cannon's contract if we could. And Correa's a good pitcher who's overpaid, but Lopez is. I mean, can he bounce back from that injury? And then they can't do anything else because they have 40 million to spend on 22 players.
Right. I don't know how they don't continue to lose guys that are going to arbitrate. Like the one I was looking at is they're over budget just with like arbitration for next year again. This will be again where they'll have to figure out how to do something. And the guy I'm looking at that is one of those quiet, almost superstar level players is Ricardo Hernandez, who is, you don't look at him. He doesn't look great when you look at his stats, but the guy's, he's been a four player, so not superstar, but quiet, very good player. And I think they have to start paying him not next year, but the year after that. And I don't think they can, like as currently constructed, or is it next year? I don't remember, but they're running into something. But yeah, I think that precludes them from playoff contention for a little bit. They've got to get those finances sorted out.
And then another team that jumped out was Mexico City, because not only are they have some challenging issues. I mean, they have Pendleton, who's going to head the rotation for as long as Fred wants him to. And they've got some decent, and Rios isn't bad, but that division is also a murder fest. And you can't be average and get to the playoffs out of that division. It's just not going to happen, especially because I think on my list of teams that are going to win the Landis in the next 5 years, 3 of them were in that division. So
yeah, I think the other thing though is that like maybe if we go to a balanced schedule, like they'll just have all the wild cards out of that division, while my crappy Pacific just puts in the division winner. We're gonna change.
I mean,
we're getting a schedule update because I think Steven wanted to do it before this year and he just didn't have time, so we might be getting a different schedule next season. I don't know that it's gonna be balanced. I think I'm the only person who wants a balanced schedule. Everybody else prefers divisional, which is fine. There's merits to both, but yeah, it is pretty tough to get out of that division. That's a good reason to consider them.
And then similar reasons for Hawaii. I mean, lesser degree, but I mean, the top 3 in the Southern we're pretty tough to crack right now. I mean, I think they can get up, and I mean, the Atlantic has a couple teams that are falling off, but I don't think that Hawaii is going to rise quick enough to jump in there. And then for my 5th team, I thought about Valencia, but as we talked about earlier, that division is fairly mediocre, so it may not. If you get second, I think if you get second in the division, you're in the mix for you can't be dismissed from a wild card. And I don't think it's a stretch in 4 years, even as bad as they are now, to see them contending for second in that division. So I don't think I can rule them out of a playoff spot. And I already said earlier that I think Edmonton's going to make the playoffs in the next 4 years or 5 years. So for my 5th team, I guess, I mean, I don't. Maybe Brooklyn out of the Atlantic, because I think they were a lesser version of Atlantic City, where they tried to crack their window for 2 years, 2 or 3 years, not with as bad a contracts as Atlantic City took. But with trading for Gonzalez and Chandler, they made a similar type move, and I just don't think it's going to work.
Okay, so that's your 5. What you got, Tyler?
Okay, I think my first one's Huntsville, for all the reasons that we've hashed over. They're starting their rebuild. They got not much for their good players. They don't have prospects. Yada yada yada. I have to agree with the San Antonio pick. Their team was those top 2 pitchers, top 3 pitchers, and now that they're done, I don't think that they've had enough develop around them, and I don't see enough in the future for them to be able to jump up. Um, my third team is actually going to be Des Moines. I hate to say it for the team that hasn't made the playoffs in as long as it's been since they've made the playoffs, but uh, when you kind of touched on them, Ted, I think you got it right. It looks like their window's starting to close. You know, Ariola's only got so many more years left. He's already 30. So we're talking about a 31-year-old catcher to 36-year-old catcher. When does he fall apart? You know, Moreland's been great, but there just hasn't been enough around him.
Some moves haven't worked out. Like, it's not necessarily
right.
I in the past I've thought Des Moines did some things questionably, but I really thought this window around they did some really smart and really good stuff, and it just didn't work out. And part of it was running into Louisville and Yellow Springs when those teams have been so good. If you stuck them in my division the last couple years, not this year because they're having a down year, but the couple before that where they were just kind of barely on the outside, they might have been in. So it's
didn't we sing their praises in the free agent podcast? I seem to remember that we were jumping up and down. Or was that Omaha that we were like
Omaha.
they had the best
Omaha
offseason?
Did great, and hey, look who we're trying to like is coming out of quote unquote nowhere, but it was Omaha largely on the Tavio Sigalea signing, which has worked out amazingly for them.
Even better than we thought. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and really Des Moines, like you said, those haven't really worked out. They've made a few trades, not really emptying the system, but kind of getting rid of some of that system depth, and there just doesn't seem to be much coming up that's going to be able to push them over the top in that tough division. You guys say Mexico City. I went with Des Moines, but I think those two teams are going to have a hard time pushing through that division in the next 4 years. My fourth team, I'm actually going to go with Edmonton. I think that long term, they've got a lot of potential, and I could be 100% wrong. In 3 years from now, they might be challenging for the Pacific Division crown. But I just think so much has to go right for a team that's as bad as they've been the last couple of years. Like, for them to get in the playoffs in 4 years,
you're saying you're really only worried about year 4. You're not worried about like 34 or 35, maybe 36, but
I just don't think so.
Well, it's not.
For what it's worth, if Edmonton was in any other division, they would have been on my list. But I just don't. I mean, I think the Pacific Division, you can get up into that top 2 or 3, which will put you in the mix for a wild card spot.
Sure, and like I said, I hope that they do. You like to see them get up there, but.
But, hey, you're benefiting from this, Ted. Don't complain too much.
And I'm barely freaking winning, and I'm trying to lose my way out of the playoffs. So we're not so great right now. We're just not. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think Brooklyn is I can see Brooklyn potentially struggling, but I also can see them capitalizing. Where all of a sudden they have a year where they're a little bit better than you think, and he makes just the right moves to sneak into the playoffs. Atlantic City, Josh has shown that he's just kind of leaning into this slide. He's not really looking to rebuild, so he's going to ride this thing out until it doesn't work. So I just think those pitchers might get him into the playoffs next year or the year after before it all goes to hell. The last team I think is going to be a little bit of a shocker. I'll pick Jacksonville. I have one team news this year. I'm going to be struggling to get up to 6, and I think in the next 4 years, there's a good chance that I might get my ass kicked out of the league because I've already used my my thing for not having enough news. And if I get kicked out of the, if I end up having to leave the league, I think whoever takes over this team is immediately going to try to rebuild because of the age of all of those star players.
So when that came out and there was the big kind of pushback over 6-team news, there was kind of a flyer in there about like if you do other things that get you to the points, yes, we would like more team news, but it's possible to get by. And you're now down for like enough points worth of podcasting, maybe that you might. So what if are you worried about that if you're still in charge of the team? Like if you're still running the team, you think you're not going to make the playoffs?
Oh, not in the next 4 years. I think I would make in one of the next 2 years. We got too much young talent in the hitting department. the pitching staff is going to have to be held together with chicken wire and duct tape, but I think I'll try to figure that out. If it wasn't
I'm not letting you pick yourself
Jacksonville,
for that reason. You got to get a different one.
I'm going to go in the same division then, and I'm actually going to say Nashville.
Okay.
For the same reason that I'm saying Edmonton, I think that it's they're so far removed from a playoff spot.
Like not
and the
not that the parts aren't there, just that it won't be ready in time.
Well, I'm not a huge fan of their system either, so I just don't think that they're on the track right now to get a playoff spot in the next 4 years. They've got some talent, but I'm just not quite sold on it yet.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I mean, you got Grant Lee and Justin Jackson, both outfielders, and if we're looking around the league at the hot young guys, great. Now I'm Stu talking about international prospects. That was one of the best team news ever. I don't think Randy was here for that, but it was just literally
I was just saying, I don't remember that one.
Endless innuendo about Stu being in South America looking at young boys. It was tremendously well written.
That's fantastic.
But
if you're looking at those top 3 hitters, if they develop, they're going to be in contention for a division title for multiple years. But you're talking about, Grant Lee's only got 5 power,
right.
So he's got a long way to go on his power. Jackson, I think, is like at a 4.
They're behind the other
power,
guys, like
5 contact, and so Montreal is rebuilding on the fly. Charm City's not exactly old, and Rockville's a team that's really going to be on the rise, I feel like, over the next couple of years. I think, like you said, they're behind 2 or 3 other teams already, where their window might not open up until those 4 years are up. If we were saying it's a 5-year window, I wouldn't pick Nashville.
I think that's all. The couple of teams are easy. You need to get a couple of them. So what we have is who's on everybody's list. Huntsville, unfortunately. And then I was surprised, Randy, that we went Brooklyn over San Antonio. That's kind of, I don't know.
I thought about that too. And San Antonio was probably one of the next. Like I would put San Antonio on my list before Nashville.
Well, and this was when the effectively Wild guys did the major league one. I felt like San Antonio wouldn't have ended up on their list either. Like they picked a bunch of teams that are look horrible now, and the farm systems are not ready yet. But I think some of the low hanging fruit on this sort of thing is the team that like Huntsville, that just started their rebuild or is about to have to start their rebuild. And I don't know. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Did we all list Atlantic City?
We all did Atlantic.
No, I did not.
You did not. That's right, because I thought that he might just try to brute
he
force
might
his way into the playoffs, which is possible. That's
like if we do this podcast next year, I think Tyler, you probably would have picked Atlantic City.
Probably. Yeah, because it's one of those things where I feel like he's at such a bloated salary. Those contracts seem to be immovable right now.
I think they
just
are
immovable. Try and push. Well, if you had a team that had a high budget that was rebuilding, like Huntsville might be a team that could grab some of those guys, and he would be able to trade some prospects to get rid of the contract, but. I just think he's going to try to turn into that slide and sneak a playoff spot before they fall apart.
And he could. The top of your division is talented, but not without places a team could sneak through. That's not bad. We've only got one team that all of us picked. That's good for the league as a whole. And again, this isn't meant in any sort of way to disparage the owners of these, or the GMs of these teams. It's just we were all there at some point. And
I think had we done this, like you said, we do this podcast next year. Atlantic City is probably on a lot of lists. You do it last year, 2 years ago, Havana's probably on that list as somebody saying that team, no way in the next 4 years is that team making the playoffs.
A few years from now, it could be. I mean, what's going to happen when Diaz is not going to be good much longer. Gracia and Morales are going to get old. I've got some stuff coming through the minors, but no offense. So
you've got Felipe Rosado. Oh wait.
Oh God, I should have traded him. I held on to him, and he just fell apart. And I know he was like 19, but man, he fell apart. Oh, it was painful. Okay, so I guess that's it. I'll have these teams listed out somewhere so we can all in like about a year and a half from now, real time, see how smart or not smart we were, and hopefully some of these teams in the second half of theirs can tell us how stupid we were, that we predicted them to not make the playoffs after their multiple back-to-back Landis appearances, showing us how dumb we are.
Who left Stu off their Landis list?
Me.
You can count.
Is that really
you
why
can
you're
count
doing
on
this
hearing
stuff
that
about
one.
getting out of the league or being forced out? Is just so like when Stu wins, you don't have to listen to him? Is that what this is?
You can count. You can count on hearing that one, even if he doesn't win. You can count on hearing the fact that you dare doubt the genius.
Well,
Oh yeah.
all right. Well, if anyone's still listening, thanks again for listening to us ramble on about Vic baseball. Thanks to Tyler and Randy for hanging out with me for an hour and a half again as we record this. And it's always supposed to take 40 minutes, and it never does. We'll do this again probably sometime in the off season. Who knows? Thanks, guys.
Later.
That was fun.